Let's go ahead and get started. It looks like we got a good quorum here. Excited to have everybody on the beginning of our fifth season. I can't believe it. I hope everybody's off to a great start to the year. And like I said, I'm really excited about our topic this month because for two reasons. One, we've never done a webinar on webinars. And webinars are such an effective part of how we market. And number two, I've got probably the best B2B webinar marketing expert that I know on as our special guest. Logan and I go way back. We've known each other for many years. We met on LinkedIn, but he's got just an awesome career and really love what he's doing with webinars. In fact, we hired him last year to help us really take our webinars to the next level. And so, Logan, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Hey, Paul, every time you and I chat, it's fun. I've gotten to know more of the team over the last 6 months or so since we engaged on the project on your show. And first time on the mic together. And yes, webinar about webinars. It's kind of like anybody who's a Seinfeld fan. Remember that one where Kramer had the idea to do a coffee table book about coffee table books? I kind of feel like that whenever I'm talking about webinars on a webinar. So hopefully I maybe make you laugh as much as Kramer, but offer, some more things that you can actually use at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, why don't you tell us a little bit about what got you into this? Because your backstory on this is really interesting. And I know we've known each other since before you really started doing this, but tell us about that. What made you get down into the nitty gritty on making webinars work better?
Yeah, absolutely. I won't go too far back. My story is interesting. In 2008, I graduated college and hit the job market in the middle of the Great Recession with a journalism degree of all things. But we'll fast forward like 10 years from there, and I'll save you cutting my teeth in the sales side of the house in B2B for 10 years. But 2018 is really where I think it's applicable to this conversation. I joined a B2B podcast production agency called Sweetfish Media. That's where Paul and I met.
Yep.
And that's really where I got into the marketing side of the house and content creation, and especially audio and video content creation in B2B. Got the chance to work on some great podcasts of that time. Everybody remember, Drift and Terminus doing a lot of good stuff with Flip My Funnel and the Seeking Wisdom show back when Dave Gearhart was with Drift. Fast forward a little bit, after 4 years of doing that, I went as an in-house marketer for a project management software called teamwork.com. And that's really where I started to combine podcasting with webinars. I ran a media property we called Agency Life, and it was a weekly podcast and a monthly webinar. I love the way that it wasn't just kind of hit or miss lead gen tactic. It was a brand building thing over time. But what I learned is that I think this is maybe an old Irish proverb or something. I forget where it's at. At least that's what the internet meme told me. For every mile of road, there's 2 miles of ditch, meaning that wherever you're going, there's always a danger on one side and the other. And I think with webinars, there's a danger in, okay, this is just a sales pitch. I thought this was going to be educational. The other side is going so far into the education and brand building that you're not connecting it enough to the problems that your brand solves and driving pipeline with it. And that was the ditch that I fell in, because after 2 years, dozens of webinars, there wasn't a whole lot of pipeline contribution. There was maybe 1 or 2 closed deals out of it. And I was like, So from there, I really set out to look at, okay, from promotion to conversion to the live show to the follow-up, what can I tweak about this playbook that I ended up dubbing the Dead End Webinar Playbook? And that led me to building a 5-part framework that I use today when I launched DemandShift last year to do webinars as a service for my clients, installing those things, including a unique registration process that helped me 5x my conversion to sales calls. So a little bit of a preview there as it ties into my experience.
Yeah, I cannot wait for you to get to that one, because that little tip right there changed everything for the way that we do our webinars. And just so you guys know, this show that we do every month is actually, the B2B Growth Show is a webinar in disguise. But we made a decision a long time ago to serialize it, because we felt like we wanted to build community and build an audience. And so we've done that. And I can tell you that 70% of our pipeline comes through through our growth show. Now, don't worry, we're not here to try to sell you something today, but that's ultimately we build trust and do all the good things that you need to do and go to market. And that ultimately translates into good pipeline growth for us. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I do want to introduce Lauren, who's going to moderate today. You want to say hi, Lauren?
Yeah, hi, everybody. It's good to be here. Excited to get all meta with webinars on webinars. I wonder if there's a way we can introduce a third level, like, webinar about webinars, but we can work on that.
Yeah. And,
real inception.
Lauren, yeah, exactly. Lauren's got a little bit of a cold today, so she'll be off mic quite a bit, but she'll be managing chat, answering your questions, helping us tee up some stuff as we go through it. Logan and I will watch the chat as well. So as you have questions or comments, pop them in there. We love to bring those into the conversation for sure. And so speaking of that, let's get into the conversation. Logan, you did a great job of kind of teeing it up. I get the chance to talk to a lot of businesses about their go-to-market. And, to me, when I think about, the world of webinars in the world of B2B, I see two big challenges. One is, we try to do a top of the funnel thing, but then throw in a very bottom of the funnel pitch. And so that doesn't work very well. And then I also see the opposite, where it's like we go to a cold audience and, unlike us, where we do an event every single month, maybe, there's this panic inside the organization. Oh my gosh, we need leads. I know. Let's run a webinar. And so they run this webinar campaign to a bunch of cold audience that doesn't know them or trust them. And then it's all about a pitch slap. And so those are big challenges that I see. And the reality is there's a happy medium. And I think Logan's going to help us see some of that. Before we get too far into it, though, Logan, what's your perspective? Why do you think, webinars get such a bad rap in today's world?
One, I think that there's this misperception that like webinars have missed their moment. Like they peaked in 2020 when we were stuck inside, and a lot of people turned to webinars. And really, frankly, they didn't just turn to webinars. A lot of companies turned to just what you and I would call not just digital marketing, but just modern marketing in the 21st century of doing content and blogging and podcasts and webinars and social media. Because I was at a podcast agency over the pandemic, and so many brands came to us and like, we can't do trade shows right now. We can't do live events. We can't do executive dinners. We need to do something. Maybe it's a podcast. So I would say that pushed people along with podcasting and social and webinars, but that doesn't mean that those channels died post-pandemic. Right. So I think that's one mindset shift that is out there that I kind of like to debunk. The other thing that I think webinars get a bad rap from an audience perspective because we've all shown up to a webinar we thought was going to be educational only to be pitch slapped in the first 5 minutes. Right. And then for the remaining 55, if we stay, which we usually don't. Right. For those of us marketers who are running webinars, who have tried webinars, who've run webinars for a while and not seen the results like I did for 2 years, there's two big challenges. And some of the data that we saw in the 250 B2B marketers that we recently surveyed at DemandShift, there were a couple of big challenges. One was actually generating pipeline. Of the 250 folks that we surveyed, they said that when I asked, what's your conversion rate from webinar registration to booked sales call? The number one answer, feel like Family Feud, number one answer survey says, I'm not sure. And right behind that was like 0 to 1% was the second answer.
Wow.
And then the second problem that we saw in that data was actually getting enough registrations for all the work to be worth it. Because with a webinar, you got to plan the content. There's unique challenges with live streaming, with getting calendar invites, all of those sorts of things that are different than from non-live types of content. And so it really can't be one or the other. You can't just boost your conversion rate so high that the number of registrations doesn't matter. And you can't boost your registrations so high that you're going to get enough conversions if you're in that 0 to 1%. So it's really, you've got to tackle both of those. And I think it's interesting. We also surveyed everybody here. I'm curious how that data is going to line up with the broader research that I was doing that I just mentioned there.
Yeah, it's just listening to you talk about it, and I'd love to know, hey, audience, why do you think that webinars get a bad rap? What's the one or two things? Logan brought up a couple of points. You did that great post earlier this week to promote even this show, and you talked about the conversion cliff, which is one thing you just mentioned. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, just not getting the conversions. I remember in the early days, kind of going into COVID, webinars had such a bad rap that people were trying to come up with new names for webinar. Like, we can't call it a webinar. That's a bad word. Let's call it a webcast. Nobody's going to understand that's really just a webinar with a different name, or let's call it a stream or whatever, Mm-hmm. And, but the reality is, it's just, Whitney's got a good point. Saturated market. Everybody's doing them now. I mean, certainly that's why we did it. We were doing physical events up until COVID. And then we're like, oh gosh, we can't do that anymore. So we started doing virtual events, and we started off with this, random acts of webinar. And then we went into the serialized approach, and that's worked out way, way better for us.
Paul, one thing, just because I was going to bring this up earlier, but we were transitioning, the serialized approach, I think, is a big thing. I saw some data from Goldcast, which is a great webinar platform in their own right, but they had some data saying that attendance rate was actually higher when you look at percentage webinars that were part of a series. So I think that's a reason to do webinars as a series. The second, you actually told me a story recently where someone who is an attendee of the B2B Growth Show on a regular basis recommended the series to someone else who then became a client, but the person who recommended them wasn't a client, right? Mm-hmm. Am I getting that right? And if so, I think the story there is, without a serialized approach, no one's going to be like, hey, I attended this one webinar like 3 months ago, and Paul was really smart. But because you showed up consistently, they could say, hey, you should check this thing out. It happens at such and such time every month. Yeah. Am I getting that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. There was a current client of ours that was at a conference in Austin, and she was new to B2B, had just gotten this new role. And so she was asking around at the conference, hey, how do I get up to speed on B2B? And somebody said, check out the B2B Growth Show. It's on every month. It's a great way to get up to speed. And so I think she watched 2 or 3 of those and then reached out, and now she's a great client. And Logan, you mentioned the survey that we did, and that reminded me that I totally forgot to mention that we have an agenda with all the great stuff we're going to be talking about today. And Lauren, I don't know if you've dropped the link already. You probably have. Thank you, Lauren, because she's always got my back. Appreciate that. But inside of that agenda is actually the results, some of the results. And I am going to screen share. I said I wasn't going to when we were planning this out, but I just want everybody to see this real quick because I think it's pretty relevant. Was a lot of great data. Thank you to everybody that shared and filled out the survey for us. But this was the one I thought was most appropriate for our conversation today. And I'll make this a little bit bigger. Wow, that's real big. Okay, but that works. So I was telling Logan and Lauren that I was fighting with ChatGPT trying to get this graphic to produce this morning, and then I gave up and went over to Claude. But what you can see here is we asked you guys several questions, but the most interesting one was, what are your biggest challenges? Which also tied to what is your wish list. And it was very interesting to see how the things that you guys said you wished for directly associated with the biggest challenges that you're having, which is generating pipeline. That's number one, 33% there. Getting the right people to register, and those are very correlated. If we don't have the right folks in the room, we're not going to get the right kind of pipeline or conversions. And then, turning registrations into attendees. So those really were the big ones. Logan, thoughts, comments on that?
I think you're right about all right, let me stop there. One, that data aligns exactly with the broader research that I mentioned earlier with those top 2 challenges. So that, that just lets us know that, hey, we're not alone there, and we've got to work on both of those pieces. And those are going to be a couple of the mistakes we're going to speak to. Actually, the first 2 mistakes out of the gate. Maybe we did it wrong. Maybe we should save those for the last 2 of the 5 if we're doing it right. But Diana made a really good point in the chat. Content is not curated to the audience. One of the things I love what Paul and the Vindy team do here is during the registration process, they have a few survey questions baked in. Lots of people do polls and Q&A during the live show, but when people are registering, that's an opportunity to ask a few more questions. And guess what? That can help you have a data point to bring up live during the webinar, like we just did. Hey, maybe that's our third level of inception there, Lauren. No, webinar in a webinar, have a survey about webinars. So we got it. 3 layers deep. But to Diana's point, how can you curate it to the people who are here with that survey? We're able to say, here's what you guys said. And not only that gives us a talking point, a data point, it allows, Paul and I to go into a session like this and say, hey, we need to spend a little bit more time on these mistakes because these are the ones that people are wishing that they could fix the most. If we hadn't surveyed you guys and asked that question, we wouldn't have that insight and be able to curate and personalize the content that much more to make it more useful and therefore effective for our brand.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to steal too much thunder for later, but I think I looked at the data this morning, like 85% of the people that registered actually completed the survey. I mean, when you think about just emailing a survey out and trying to get people to fill out a survey, you're not going to get that kind of response rate. So you've got people in the moment, they're interested, you're going to get high levels of response rate. And, in our world at Vindy, we're so much about collecting signals over clicks these days. So those survey answers also become signals that we can put in our CRM that help us down the road in serving our clients, tailoring our content, all those things. So that was quite a bit of a preamble. So I think we need to jump into the actual mistakes, and let's tackle mistake number 1, which is the same promo playbook from 2010. So that is the mistake. We've got B2B companies running that same promo playbook that they've been running for a long time. What do you mean by that, Logan?
Yeah, I work with a lot of my clients at DemandShift that either have tried webinars and stopped them and they're looking to us to help kind of revitalize it, or they've never done webinars and they're not sure where to start. In either case, they're usually looking to kind of the typical checklist, which checklists aren't bad, but if our marketing is just kind of checklist marketing of, hey, we do webinars, we do this, we do this, we do this. Why do we do it? I don't know. Is there a better way? I don't know. We just check this box. And the typical checklist for promo tactics is, well, we email our list, which you should be doing, and we post on social. Well, and when we post on social, what do? We use the same webinar Canva template that everybody uses. Do we all get our webinar graphics from the exact same Canva template, by the way? Let me know in the chat if you've seen the exact same one, the same speaker bubbles, same layout, that sort of stuff. And then we don't go any further than there. Maybe we do some paid ads, but it just kind of stops there. And we wonder why our registration's not higher. Well, we're tapping into an existing list. So we're not reaching a new audience. Social can be really tough unless you do some very specific things that kind of work within the platforms, because most people on social are looking for quick insights / entertainment. They're not going to say, hey, where can I go read a long form blog post? Where can I hear about your latest YouTube video drop? Where can I hear about the next event to attend? And so there's some friction there to try and get people off social to your webinar. So while that's part of the playbook, it can't be all you do. And that's where I see a lot of brands stop is, they do email, they do social. I'd love to hear in the chat if you guys have certain channels that are working for you to promote your webinars. Let us know in the chat. But I think that's sticking to the same channels and doing some of the same boring creative are two of the problems here, and we can get into some of the solutions. But I'll let you chime in there, Paul, before we get to it.
I just want to, this might be a good transition into it, because we do about, on average, we have for this webinar, about 250. We just looked at the data. Last year, we averaged 250 registrations per event. And about half of those registrations actually come from LinkedIn. And I'm happy to share the playbook that we use for that. But to your point about graphics, Lauren, actually, this was a great kudos for Lauren, but we were using the same doggone template. I mean, think about it, you're doing the same show every month and you use the same template. You just swap out the talking heads. It became our audience got really blind to it. And so we came up with new templates and new background colors. And so no 2 months do they see the same, even though the format's relatively the same, we've got different different templates, different looks, and so it's so better to stop the scroll. And so that's worked out really well for us. And I'm happy to share a couple of other secrets, but I don't want to go too far into it. So love to know, you guys, what channels are working for you? As Logan said, are you having success with social, or what paid avenues are you using? I mean, obviously everybody I think does email, but what are the interesting ones that you guys are using? Logan, you want me to go ahead and share? Like, I'll tell you the quick secret that we do on LinkedIn, and that is we set up an event, a LinkedIn event, and then we have our sales team, which is primarily me, invite our first connections that are our ICP to that event. And so as soon as we do that, the ICP gets a notification, and it's super one click. They can register for the event. Now that may seem like very rudimentary, but I'm going to tie it to most of our clients, when we start talking to them, they're not doing that with their sales reps. B, because we do it every month, this is the tie into the serialized event. We can actually go back to previous events and see all the people that said yes, they were going to come. And so when we're ready to start inviting for the next month, we go to the last 3 to 5 months and invite those people that said yes the last 3 to 5 months first. And our hit rate is super high on those.
Yeah. Yeah. Going for repeat attendees, there's just so much to that. Is it okay if I share my screen, Paul?
Yeah.
I didn't prep you guys for this, but I just...
Oh, no, we can't do it. No, sorry.
Going off script. I don't know if we can handle it.
Off script. Only if it's like meta upon meta upon meta. That's really the only way that this might work.
Paul, you hit on exactly one of the things that we work with on for a lot of our clients at DemandShift, and that is taking your webinar, whether you're doing it as a live stream or not. You guys, you can execute what Paul was just talking about here. A lot of people don't realize that you can list your webinar as an event on your company page, even if it has an external link. So you can see this one here, this all-day summit we're doing next Thursday. It has its own landing page. It's on our site at demandshift.co. But I listed it as an event here, and now I added all of the speakers, which with this one, we've got 12 speakers, right? And so now, normally when you go to an event page on LinkedIn, you get the share button, right? And you can repost it to your feed. You can send a message. If you're the owner of the event, you can boost it. What a lot of people don't know is hidden right here. And this is what Paul was talking about. And I wanted to give you guys a visual, because some people are like, oh, invite people on LinkedIn. They're never going to find this unless you've seen it. As a speaker, you can hit invite. You can select people one by one. You can search them by name. You can kind of mass filter by geo and by industry. And what LinkedIn allows you to do is, let's say I want to invite all my friends in professional services. I can select all, and then I could maybe, kind of pick and choose here. You can send up to 1,000 invites a week per speaker. And to Paul's point, this doesn't come in as a spammy DM. It comes in almost like a connection request, where it says like, hey, Logan's inviting you to the B2B Growth Show on Wednesday the 14th, has a little X and a check, and they can just decline it or accept it. Now, are you going to get a 50% response rate to this? No. But in the first day of promoting this event that we're doing next week, half of our initial registrations came from this tactic, no ad spend, and it's multiplicative when you have a lot of different speakers. So I just wanted to put kind of some, image, some visualization of what Paul was talking about. The other thing is, you don't always have to have a graphic. Check out this post I did for another client. I actually, teamwork.com, who used to be an employer, has been a client now at DemandShift. And we were doing a masterclass on AI for agencies. And I wrote a post. We let it go out organically to promote it as a speaker. And then they boosted it as a thought leader ad. And now it looks like an organic post in the feed. When it was boosted, it just said promoted by teamwork.com right here, but it doesn't look like an ad. And so if you're using LinkedIn, and a lot of you are saying LinkedIn ads work really well, think about your format. They can be text only. They can be thought leader ads. They can be memes and GIFs. You'll see a lot of the things. This is one that performed really well. It's kind of in between that typical graphic, but not kind of the standard small speaker bubbles. But we even have some, if I scroll up a little bit more, where we did some more memes. But these almost looking a little bit more like a YouTube thumbnail than something else, because there's like larger face as opposed to like prioritizing the time and location, those sorts of things. So I just wanted to share a couple of those things to give you guys real world examples of what we're talking about.
Yeah, Chuck, you had a really great question. So about can you use the invite to encourage contacts to repost? What I do, it's hard. You can't really do it inside of the event media type inside of LinkedIn. So what I do is several times when I'm promoting the Growth Show, like leading up to the Growth Show, I'll post 2 or 3 times promoting it. And I'll take one of those, I'll take a copy of that post, like you can copy the URL. And then I go into I actually look at the people that are already registered for the event, and I drop them a DM with a link to the post, and I ask them to go like or share my post. And that works really well. So, hey, Logan, any other tips, or you want to move on to the next mistake?
I have some other ones. I will probably drop a link in the chat to a video I did on using Eventbrite to actually promote your webinars, which you wouldn't think, but that one's worked really, really well. But I want to give some more time to this to the others. So let's keep going.
Especially mistake number 2, which is like my favorite mistake of all, and that's the dead end sign up process. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So as we talked about earlier, when someone is showing interest in any sort of content access, whether that's signing up for a webinar, downloading an ebook, downloading a template, whatever the case may be, you have their attention. Something that you have said says, I want what you're offering. I'm willing to give my email, which is now a higher bar than it used to be, right? Because we've all got fake emails that we sign up for stuff where we know we maybe want to access, but we don't want to give it away. Like that's a real payment, right? It is a transaction of value. And so often, that is the moment that we are not capitalizing on because we send people to a registration page that we don't control, not only just the branding, but we can't control the behavior of what happens after they register. And that's why this is why I stopped sending people to a Zoom registration page hosted on Zoom or any webinar platform really, because it just gives a thank you message. You can maybe personalize it, but how do you take them on another journey and capitalize on this interest where you've got them leaning forward? So what we've developed at DemandShift, we call the 2-step sign-up process. To a point earlier, I think it was someone had asked, I forget who it was in the chat, how much is too much information to ask? We've found that when you break up your sign-up process into these 2 steps, the first step is the basic information you need, usually first name, last name, email, which is what you need for like Zoom or Riverside or something to get registered. And then the second step is a survey that is basically framed as a completion of their registration process and says, hey, answer a few more questions here. We've found that, like Paul said, when you strategically pick 5 to 8 questions that you want to ask on that second step in the sign-up process, that you get 75, 80, sometimes 90% completion rate. Now you got to pick and choose those questions very carefully. There are a few different question types we mentioned here. Demographic info, anything that you want to get first party data on that you don't want to pay for enrichment that could help you qualify folks in or out. Second, any data points that are going to help you understand what is their situation. And then third, qualification questions that you can ask that help you understand where they're at, what is their biggest pain point, those sorts of things. And the magic to this is then at the end, you can take them on a specific journey, especially if you build some branching logic into this survey that says, hey, you mentioned that your number one problem with webinars is conversion to pipeline. Would you like to book a call with a team who developed a framework to convert more webinar signups into pipeline? And I've started doing that on the back end of the registrations for people who sign up for my webinars. And that's essentially what took my conversion rate from the industry average of 1 to 2% to all the way up to 10%. And we've executed that for a lot of clients. I mean, you guys even saw this, Paul. What was kind of your before and after implementing this 2-step sign up and getting away from the dead end registration page?
Yeah. So a little bit of the backstory there is the timing was perfect last year. One of our goals was to elevate the Growth Show in 2025. And one of our measuring sticks for that was to see if we could increase lead conversion. I already mentioned earlier, we get a lot of pipeline that's influenced by this, but we actually wanted to see more lead conversion without violating what we feel is the promise of this show, that this show is still very much about serving the audience and providing great content. And so, Logan, you and I talked, you kind of shared with me what you just shared with the audience. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is like the perfect scenario, because when you think about it, our registrations last year average about 30% of the 30 to 40% of the people that register show up. And so if you save the close for the show ups, or some kind of call to action, if you will, you've just knocked out 60% of the potential audience. And so the other thing that was really exciting to me, Logan, about it was the jobs to be done component. Like, when I'm registering in my mind psychologically, I'm trying to accomplish a task. And if we start asking them more questions to accomplish the task, it doesn't feel burdensome to the user, and they're in the mode of accomplishing the goal. So they're the most receptive in my mind at that point to receive a call to action versus waiting until the end of a webinar for just the 40% that showed up after they're a little cognitive overloaded and now you're trying to sell them something, right? And so the results have been fantastic. We never would generate quote unquote leads from our growth show. And now we do. Every single show we get leads, and we still don't have to do some kind of a hard pitch at the end, which satisfies my real desire and vision for what this show is all about.
Yeah. And part of the magic, you guys, is pretty much everybody has some sort of booking tool, whether you're an agency where the CEO is doing a lot of the sales, or you've got a sales team where you're round robining, inbound leads. You've got some sort of meeting tool, whether that's Chili Piper or Calendly or HubSpot meetings, right? And so the secret sauce to this two-step sign-up process is don't let the initial registration hit a dead end. Create this second step that is the survey. And then when they say yes to booking a call, don't say, great, we'll follow up. That's another dead end. When they say yes, redirect them to the page where they can book the call. And if you want to really increase your conversions, sell the call on that page. Don't just make it a general like, hey, meet with Logan. Like if you guys went through one of my two-step sign-up processes and it said, yes, I want to book a call with a team that specializes in increasing conversions for B2B webinars, then on that landing page with my calendar, you'll see on this call, you're going to learn about the webinar fast track framework. We're going to review your current webinar program and your biggest challenges. We're going to show you 3, and there's some bullet points to it. So there's little tweaks you can make along the way to where if you go from that 1% to maybe 8%, that doesn't mean that that's your cap. You can tweak a few more things, get to 9 to 10. We had a client recently where 18% of their webinar registrations booked a call with them before the webinar ever started.
Yeah, I want to answer Diane's question because it's a good one about balancing education and demo and virtual content. So Logan hit on a couple of these. So, we're doing the survey, and the call to action you're always going to get from us at a session like this is about a call to learn more, not a call to buy now. And so the survey that we have at the end, the question that we have at the end of our surveys for registration for this show is always about, do you want to learn more? Hey, the topic is about webinars. Do you want to learn more about Logan's 5-step process? That's an example of that. So, that's how we get the balance. And then every month we have a different topic. So this month is webinars. Next month is about SEO and AEO. So the call to action is always going to be relevant to learn more about that topic. And I think that's the key, that you've got to watch out for, because nobody likes the bait and switch. And so we'll never do the bait and switch. That's just not something that we're going to do. And I don't think it's a good practice for anybody if they expect to have good, webinar marketing. In fact, that might be a good segue, Logan, into the next mistake, which is the pitch slap, right? We sign up for a webinar. We think we're going to learn some really great tips. And then we show up and it's, hey, let me show you my tool. Feature, buy now. And we're all like, oh my God, that was a waste of 30 minutes of my time, or 10 minutes, because I'm going to hit the eject button really fast.
Yeah. And I love that now, we're used to it and we've been using it enough in B2B that when we say pitch slap, we don't have to say, I said with a P, not a B, because everybody's like, oh yeah, I know what the pitch slap is. I've felt it. I felt it on both sides of my face now so many times. And so the way to get around this, kind of going off of what Paul was saying and the question you guys were asking in the balance, is I'm not saying that you create this 2-step sign up process to just have a webinar, but it's really just to get people onto your calendar. It has to be both. There has to be effort and intention in putting together a live show. What we're advocating for is that there are a lot of people who are signing up for the value who never make it to the live show, who are potentially hot leads. You're just not giving them an easy path to get there. It's why we call our framework the webinar fast track framework, right? I was talking about the road analogy with the ditches. We want to give people an easy path to get there. However, there's going to be a lot of people. We all have seen the studies. If we're in B2B, 95% of our TAM, of our total addressable market, typically at any given time is not in market to buy, right? And 5% is in market. And there's two mistakes here, just like we were talking about the ditches. We pitch slap the 95%, but we miss out on the 5%. So if you're catching more of the 5% with that 2-step sign-up process on registration and giving them an easy path to say, yeah, I'm a hand raiser. I'm interested in actually at least learning more now, maybe not buying now. How do we deliver value to the 95%? And I think one way is doing a serialized webinar program rather than kind of one-off, because that gives you the ability to not only give people a reason to recommend it, as we were saying earlier with Paul's example, gives you the ability to go deeper. I was part of an agency called Business Builders. Paul and I both know the CEO over there. And when I started that webinar series, I started with a messaging framework that we used for our clients, and then said, hey, next month, we're going to talk about a template to use this messaging framework and bring it to life on your homepage. And then the next month, we're going to talk about building a marketing strategy now that you've got a high converting website that's built on good messaging. You see what I'm saying? That will be different in every case, but doing serialized content allows you to deliver more value. The last thing I'll say on this is what Paul was just mentioning. There's still time for a call to action to learn more, but what you don't want to do is shove that in at the end where not everybody's there. So even the 40%, you're not getting all of those people at the very last minute. It feels forced. It feels awkward and rushed. And so I'm a big fan, and I help a lot of my clients create a little ad break to say, hey, we're going to get to Q&A here in a second, but if this session has been valuable for you, we've helped you solve a problem in some way, you want some help to solve the problem hands-on, or at least learn how we could help you, here's how we can do that. And so one, move that CTA from the end, move it in the middle of value where you're educating and then you're engaging with the Q&A. Two, give people multiple ways to convert. Put a link in the chat, put a big QR code up on screen, right? And maybe make it exclusive, like some sort of exclusive giveaway of like, hey, normally, if potential clients want to book a call with us, they go to our website, they book here, they get 30 minutes. It's a discovery session, yada, yada, yada. Well, here, we're actually going to give you an assessment, and we're going to give you 5 action points if you book a call with us, the first 5 qualifying attendees, that sort of thing. So I would say kind of run through that checklist and say, is my CTA meeting all of those? And see which ones you can implement, and you're going to see better conversions as you deliver value at the same time and create that balance we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I know that this plan, one of the, obviously we've got the quantitative way of measuring, are we getting more leads now than we were before? But to this pitch slap topic, I can give you a great qualitative example. So even for this show, a gentleman registered for this show because we reached out to them using our LinkedIn invite strategy that I shared with you guys earlier and Logan shared. They jumped over to the site. They filled out the form. They went through the survey. They scheduled a meeting with Logan and me. And then the guy emailed me directly and he said, man, the timing of this thing is so perfect. We're just at a point where we're trying to figure out how to do webinars for 26. Thank you guys for doing this. I've already signed up for a meeting with you guys later on in the month. Can't wait to meet with you. And when I read that, Logan, I'm like, that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish, right? That's exactly what we're trying to do. This isn't high pressure sale. Has anybody ever been to like timeshare sales pitches where they're trying to get you to go to Florida and buy? I mean, that's the last thing in the world I ever want to do as a salesman, is to feel that icky and creepy. I want to help people. Good selling is really about helping people get what they need and what they want. And that's what a good call to action should be about as well. So let's go ahead, Logan, unless you have anything else you want to share. You want to move on to mistake 4? Let's do it.
Let's go for it.
All right. treating all attendees the same after an event. But they're not all prospect. We just can't treat them all the same. What are you talking about?
Well, I was chatting with a potential client earlier today, and I said this just kind of off the cuff, and he responded like, "Oh yeah, that's really true." It kind of surprised me the way that he responded with such emotion. I said, "There's two big problems, or two mistakes we can make. There's two mistakes we can make as marketers: not handing our sales team any leads." The second one is handing our sales team a bunch of leads they don't know what to do with, right? And so often with webinars, it's like, hey, there's 200 people, 300 people who registered for this webinar. Go get them. Are these in target accounts? Are they showing intent? Are they interested? Maybe we segment by they attended or they didn't, right? And so the only personalization we can do is, hey, saw you attended, or hey, saw you signed up. That's not personalization. That's not, customizing the outreach to the individual. I'm going to go off script again and share my screen one more time, you guys. Let's go to this window. This is an example of a lead tracker. Obviously, stuff has been redacted here with names and emails, so they're just tests. But this is an example of a lead tracker we run with our clients at DemandShift. And we not only give them, hey, here's the name and email of the people who signed up for the webinar, but here's all their answers to the survey questions. You can see the ones we highlighted here, which are the big wins of they said yes to booking a call, right? And we kind of track that through. But imagine handing over to your sales team, hey, here's a list of leads. And it's not just emails. It is, hey, we've segmented this so that you can personalize, you can prioritize based on, as Paul said earlier, each one of these survey answers is a signal, right? And you can do some automation off of this, or you can just, hey, I'm going to pull the right accounts that answered this question and I'm going to give them to the sales team. The rest I'm just going to put into a long-term nurture via marketing, that sort of stuff. This has actually gotten more sophisticated since I created this example. We're doing some clay enrichment so that, we're pulling in LinkedIn profiles, company, industry, some of those sorts of things that you also want to segment on, as well as pulling in information from LinkedIn when we can. But that is the foundation. So that survey not only helps you curate the content better for the audience, as Diana was saying earlier, not only helps you convert more registrants into immediately booked sales calls, but it also allows you to do more personalized and prioritized outreach to not waste your sales team's time when you hand over the leads that said, no, not right now to booking a call, but they've given you all these other signals that you want to make sure don't go to waste.
Yeah. My biggest frustration when I'm talking to a new company or a prospect or a new client, and I'm starting to talk to their sales reps, and I'm like, hey, what do you think about marketing? What do you think about the leads that marketing's giving you? And I hate to say it, but way more than 50% of the time, the sales reps say, marketing's leads are crap. I don't like marketing leads. They suck. I don't want to follow up with them. As soon as something comes across the transom, I roll my eyes. I'd rather go hunt my own deals. And that just breaks my heart, because in today's world, we can do such a better job. And Logan, your examples are great examples. And if we treat every lead, we treat webinar leads like we treat trade show leads. It's like, hey, here's 100 badge scans. Good luck with that, sales team. And there's no reason to do that. And so another good reason why, as you mentioned, that survey is so important. Another thing that we do, I'm just going to connect the serialized event component to it. Because we do a serialized event, every single time somebody registers, we know if they're a newbie, and we also know if they're a veteran. And so we have a whole different playbook that I totally stole from Taffer. Do you guys remember Bar Rescue, the TV show Bar Rescue? I don't know if anybody ever watched that, but Taffer is a consultant for restaurants and bars. And anyways, I saw a video on YouTube one time, and he was like, the most important thing you need to do as a restaurant owner is to get somebody to come in for the first time, to come in for the second time. Because if they come in for the second time, you've got them hooked. They're 70% of the time they become regulars. And so what he recommended, and I totally stole this idea, is when somebody walks into a restaurant, the maitre d' at the front says, hey, is this your first time visiting us or not? And if they say yes, then they get the red napkins, not the white napkins. And so when they go set the table, everybody in the restaurant knows this is a first time guest, and they roll out the red carpet for them with the hope that they come back for the second thing. And so we are able to do that here at Vendy. When somebody comes in, we know if you're a newbie, and we're going to treat you differently. Not that we treat our regular attenders bad at all, but we just want them to know we're all about supporting you and helping you make good decisions in your world, grow your career, whatever those things are. And so, that's another way that we treat our audience differently. Not everybody's treated the same.
I love that story, and it's a great analogy, carries over to B2B, and there's good precedence for this, right? Lauren and I were talking the other day about how much big Disney fans we are. My family loves to get away from Colorado in late spring and get down to Orlando, go to the Disney parks. And what do if you're a first time at Disneyland or Disney World? They give you a big giant pen that says first time, right? Not only to make it special, but to call it out for the cast members to do some certain things for the guest experience. And so we all know that Disney, regardless of what you think on some of their things when it comes to media and movies and all that sort of stuff, but they know how to curate a guest experience. They know how to make it magical. They are the ones who, they own the IP on making things magical, and they do something similar to what you were talking about there, Paul.
Yeah. I'm just going to touch on Max's question real quick, and then we need to jump on to mistake fives. So we
let's do it.
Have plenty of time. But Max, you're asking about a solid messaging format for people that don't show up or do show up in booking meetings. Man, what I have found and this is in general, so this is not just applicable to webinar marketing, but problem centric and related to as much information as you have about what you know about them. So if they came to the webinar or didn't come to the webinar, there's a topic related to that webinar. So you try to use that old ADA format, attention, interest, desire, action, that the AID or ADI, whatever it is. That's I've had so much success with that. The idea is always make it about them. One of the things that I sometimes try to do in my follow-up emails or with my sales team is, hey, can you talk about the problem and encourage them to meet with you without ever saying anything about Vendy or what we do as a service? And what that does is it forces you to make the conversation about them and helping them and the problems that they have. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that helps, Max.
Yeah. And Chuck's question about follow-up as well. We're not normally asking them, like, are you open to follow-up? We're asking, would you like to book a call now? So the people that say no to that usually are still receptive to some sort of messaging. But to Paul's point, you want to use the signals that they've given you in the survey questions that they've answered, telling you their top problem, their current situation, right? I've got a question in my survey behind my registration forms that says, hey, what's your webinar status? Never done webinars, active, or we're paused, or inactive, right? And now I can approach those folks differently, whether that's one-to-one messaging or something automated.
Absolutely. Okay. We've got 9 minutes.
Let's go.
Our promise to you guys is we'll be done at the top of the hour. And so I'm putting you on the hot seat here, Logan. Treating the end like the end is mistake number 5. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, this is going to be meta as well. So you guys notice that we're hosting this webinar on Riverside, which I was first exposed to Riverside back in like 2019, 2020, when I was at the podcast agency that I mentioned. And at that point, a lot of our clients were doing podcasts. They were just recording on Zoom or Teams or even Uber Conference. Anybody remember Uber Conference? That was a fun one. They had like this fun wait music song. Anyway, I digress. But there wasn't really a platform that would give you clean audio and video from each host and each guest. And it was the middle of the pandemic. People weren't recording podcasts in person. And we moved all of our clients' podcasts onto Riverside because they did exactly that. Gave you high quality, but also gave you the ability to make it super easy. Join in a browser. Well, now Riverside is one of the top platforms to just say, hey, I'm going to record, but I'm also going to have this scheduled as a webinar, but I'm also going to live stream this. But oh, by the way, I can repurpose the content not only because it is I've got higher quality. So when I pull out a section of Paul talking, it's not Paul up in the corner this tiny and then the screen share this big or the deck that just has the agenda. And you're like, oh, that was a really great moment of Paul saying something. You've got individual tracks for the presentation, the screen, each of the speakers, and even some AI-based ways to repurpose stuff. And so that's just one way that we focus on repurposing webinar content, because, back to where we started, right? I think one of the challenges I see a lot, and you guys kind of echoed in the survey responses, is if we're going to put in all this effort, the juice better be worth the squeeze, right? We better get enough 100%. Registrations for it to be worth it. The conversions to leads better be worth it. The influence pipeline. What about the impact on our content creation process, right? Most webinars, just because they are in B2B, are typically an hour. They're usually featuring some sort of expert speaker, either someone outside you've tapped or someone on your executive team or someone from your services team or something like that. That time is valuable. How often do you get them speaking for a solid hour on the problems you solve, the expertise your team has? Riverside is a great option for repurposing that for video content. But my goodness, take that transcript and plug it into a custom GPT or a Gemini gem that you've built to take existing expertise content and break it down in formats that work. So much of our problem with AI generated content is that we use AI as the starting point, not as the accelerator, right? If AI is the starting line, we're going to get generic content generated for us, whether our topic is marketing or manufacturing or life sciences or whatever. But when we feed AI our expertise and we tell it, here are the formats that work, man, can you get a lot out of that? And so those two things, like use a platform that enables repurposing really well at high quality. And two, make sure that you've got systems in place to repurpose it in text, in images, in video for the different channels that make sense for you.
Yeah. In fact, that's why we moved to Riverside last year. Is we were on Zoom and we were doing horizontal videos because that's all you could do in post-production was Zoom. And Riverside lets us do vertical and horizontal clips, whatever we want, post-production. Lots of capabilities there. So this feeds, another reason why we like serialized events, it feeds our entire content strategy for the year. I mean, Lauren will tell you, we have more video content than we can actually publish. Like, we produce so much content, we can't publish it all, right? Because this one episode will be 10 or 12 cuts of really great hot takes and things like that Logan said. But then that becomes blog content, social media content, etc. And all of that is what we call the content flywheel. You hear us talk about that a lot on these growth shows. But I want to talk for a second, while we have a few minutes left, about the old school B2B marketers that may be on the call today. Because what we just talked to you through is maybe a 201 strategy. I'm going to go back to 101. And I hate to say this, but I see it all the time. Put your doggone webinars on your website so people can watch them, and don't gate them. That's silly. That is so old school. I can't tell you how many times I go talk to a new prospect and I look at their webinar strategy. They tell me they're doing webinars. I can't find them anywhere. I can't find them on YouTube. I can't find them on their website. It's so frustrating. And then sometimes when I do find them, they're gated. It's like they want everybody to fill out a form to watch the replay. In today's world, that just doesn't work as well. So if you go to our website, you'll see every single episode of every growth show we've ever had is the replay is there. We've taken the transcripts, we've utilized those. There's really no value, especially if you've got your go-to-market system and your CRM set up the right way. There's really no reason why you need to gate content like that. Now, there is a place for gated content. I'm not saying no gated content. I'm just saying if you're not putting your replays on your website, you're hurting yourself. You need to start doing that. And so, hey, Logan, as we land the plane here, two quick things I wanted to talk about. One is, we would love to sit down with the folks that are attending today. This is exclusive just for you guys that, there's 34 of you that are still here looking at my counter. I think we were almost to 50 a little bit earlier, going back to, hey, we had 200 people register and about 60% of them showed up live. You 34 that made it to the end, congratulations, because what we would love to do is offer you the opportunity just to sit down with Logan and me for 30 to 45 minutes to walk through your current webinar strategy and give you some ideas and pointers on what you can do to take your webinar marketing to the next level. I can certainly talk to you about serialized events and how that fits into your overall go-to-market strategy. Logan can talk to you about, putting in this not a dead end conversion process, and really more on just how to take your webinars to the next level. We'd love to do that for you. We've got a link in the agenda. I think we'll go ahead and drop a link in the comments as well, Lauren, if you could do that. Logan, anything you want to say about that session that we'll do for folks?
Yeah, I think especially if you attended all the way through here, you got some value, which other than having nothing to do, which is none of us, I'm assuming that's the reason why you're still here. And you probably have some questions of like, well, what could this look like? Or I have an existing webinar program. I'm not happy with my webinar platform, or I'm not sure if my setup would allow for this two-step sign-up process. How would that actually work? Those sorts of things. We'll be happy to kind of do a snapshot with you, ask you some questions about your current setup, make some recommendations, no strings attached. Obviously, if Vendy or DemandShift or both of us together, where we've explored some opportunities to collaborate with some clients, sometimes that makes sense as well. But basically, take this conversation a little bit further, dig into your situation, and make it personalized and valuable, even more so for you.
Awesome. Logan, tell us about the webinar fast track. I know that that's a resource that we put in our resource center. You wanted to make that available to the audience. What can people expect if they follow that link?
Yeah, so that is a free checklist. So if you go to the agenda, you go to the resources section, it's just labeled Webinar Fast Track. That is my full, I think about 50-point checklist that I use with clients from beginning to end on each webinar. And there's some tutorial videos, there's some examples there. There's even, I think I've got an AI prompt or two baked in there of prompts that I use for not only repurposing, but for planning. So there's several resources packaged up into that one checklist.
Awesome. All right, guys, we're at the top of the hour. We're not going to be doing the Growth Show next month because for the first time in 25 years, I'm going to be on sabbatical. I'm literally going to be in the Dominican Republic for an entire month. And yes, it will be a sabbatical. I will not be partying the entire time. So we won't have a February Growth Show, but we will be back in March. And it's going to be all about SEO, AEO. It's probably the number one topic I hear questions about. You can register for that in the agenda or on our website. Thank you guys so much for hanging with us. I know we went a couple of minutes over. We really do appreciate you guys. Logan, thank you so much. If you want to get connected with Logan, all of his information's there in the agenda. And we look forward to seeing you guys back in March. Take care, everybody. See ya.